All right. Today we continue our interview series. We've got Mike Barner on today. He'll be telling us about what his life is like in New York as a fantasy basketball analyst. Let's go balls deep.
I could bet all of the riches that I ever had.
Hello, and thank you for joining me for another episode of the Balls Deep Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by Fantasy Basketball International. FBIbasketball.com is our website. I'm Adam King, the host. At AdamKing91 on Twitter is where you can find me. So, as I said, we are continuing to roll through our interview series. I think we're up to number 6 or 7. And I did allude to the fact that I have Mike Barner with me today. Mike, good evening. Your kids are in bed and you're ready to go.
Yes, good evening. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it. Yeah, they're asleep. I'm free now. Let's do it.
Very good. I wish my kids were in bed by 9 o'clock at night.
They're little.
They're little, so
yeah.
that's all right. We'll get into families shortly, I'm sure. But yeah, so look, the first, as I said, so you're from Rotowire. I know that, but per your Twitter bio, and you've already said you can't fit everything in. You actually contribute for a few different companies and providers. So, do you want to give us first just a bit of an overview of what you do and who you do it for?
Sure. Yeah. So I do both. I do NBA, Major League Baseball, and NFL coverage, both fantasy and betting. I contribute to Rotowire, Sportsline, DraftKings, Real Time Fantasy Sports, a bunch of other ones. So yeah, whether it's betting or fantasy, I do some podcasting, some shows. I do the Early Edge show for Sportsline. I do some basketball podcasting with Rotowire and a lot of written content.
And I never really know, because sometimes people are just very, very good at multitasking. But is this your full-time job, or do you have another job?
Yes, yeah, this is my full-time job.
It is your full-time job. Okay, so I think I've had 2 people on so far that do it full-time, and the rest all work, do something else, and this is more of a paid hobby, or sometimes not even a paid hobby. So if it's a full-time job, you've obviously you've probably done some study, you've probably worked towards this. So I guess give people an idea of the steps that you've taken and what you've done to get to where you are now, working for a few different services.
Sure. I went to school for, I have a degree in broadcasting and mass communications. I originally wanted to get into sports radio. When I was a little kid, I wanted to be the voice of the radio voice of the New York Yankees. That was obviously a very high aspirations for a job. And then as I got older, I met my wife in high school, and we kind of realized we were going to get married early on. So I didn't want to be a play-by-play guy, because I knew that there was a lot of traveling involved in that. So I wanted to get into sports talk radio. That was my initial goal. And then while I was in college, I played fantasy sports my whole life. So I was applying for a whole bunch of fantasy sports writing jobs. I got my first one as a part-time gig for KFFL, which is no longer in existence. Back in January of 2007 was when this all started.
Okay,
so it's been a while.
yeah, that's a while. You don't look that old.
Yeah,
aging better than me.
I'm getting there. I'm almost 40, a couple years away. So
yeah, right. Okay. Okay. So look, I guess so for you, this has been sort of a path that's always been there. It's diverted slightly. Getting married does tend to impact what you want to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm much the same. I've known my wife since we were about 7. So yeah, we didn't get together in high school. I wanted to, she didn't want to. She just thought I was annoying. So I plugged away and got there. And so you mentioned you've got some young kids now. So 2 kids, 3 kids?
I have 2 kids. I have a 7-year-old daughter and a 3-year-old son. So I'm pretty busy keeping up with all of their activities and whatnot. But yeah, very lucky to have two great kids and a great family.
And are they, so for me, my kids have zero interest in sport, which is disappointing. But so, and I mean, your kids, obviously they're still a little bit younger, but have you got them involved in playing sport at all?
Yeah, I've tried to get them involved in sports. They both play soccer. I've been coaching soccer. I haven't played soccer. I hadn't played soccer since I was in high school. Um, but they're little enough to where my skill set can at least
Yeah.
I can at least try and I'm just trying to teach them how to not run into each other and which direction to go in.
Yeah.
They both play soccer, and my daughter does gymnastics, but they're too little for basketball. Or, I mean, my daughter could. She hasn't really shown an interest in it, and I don't think she could sit still long enough for baseball or t-ball. And my son's still only 3, so but we'll see which goes. I would love to get them both into basketball at some point. That's
Yeah.
my favorite sport, but we'll see. We'll see how things progress. I'm not going to force them. They got to make their own
No.
decision.
Yeah, no, I tried with my kids, but no, no success. Unfortunately, my daughter does a few things, but my son, it's all about Dungeons and Dragons
Yeah.
for him.
Each his
So
own.
that's right. Look, he loves it. He's got his crowd of people, and keeps him happy. And I'm always learning because I know very little about it. So he's always got new information for me. So I sent you some questions before we sort of jumped on, and you had a bit of a read through this, and we've touched on a few of them. But outside of fantasy, and I mean, you've got your young family, so you're obviously spending time with them on weekends and things like that. But anything specific that you like to do? I mean, I know for a lot of us, like for me, if I got asked this question, well, fantasy basketball is my hobby. So but like holidays, watching movies, TV, anything like that sort of stand out?
I really don't have time for. We're pretty lucky. I am very lucky that this is my full-time job. I've always loved doing this. Like I said, I've been playing fantasy sports. I used to play back on like the Sporting News. I
Mm,
played when it was on. They had something. I think it was smallworld.com. I used to play on there. It's like salary cap leagues. I was playing this stuff when I was like in middle school,
yeah.
early middle school. So I just love playing fantasy sports. And with the 2 young kids, most of my free time is spent driving them around. Like I said, I coach their soccer team, so I do that. But yeah, I mean, if I get a chance to watch some TV with my wife, that's a good thing. But we're just trying to keep up with the little kids at this point. And I was in 9 fantasy basketball leagues this year. I did 7 football leagues. So that's my hobby / job.
Eddie, and so are you like me? And coming into every season, I always swear that I'm going to do fewer leagues, and it just never happens because I get roped in by people and by myself.
100%. You just get asked, and you don't want to turn down any of these industry leagues with the people that you've worked with for a long time. Those are really a lot of fun leagues. So I will say, for basketball, I am making it my mission to not be in any weekly lineup leagues next year.
Yes,
It has to be
yes,
a minimum of Monday, Friday. I am working on the one league that I'm in that I don't want to drop out of is the FSGA league. That is a Monday only lineup, and I have been working behind the scenes to get that to a minimum of Monday, Friday. I think I have won that over. So my mission next year, I don't mind being in 9 leagues, but I will not be in any weekly lineup leagues. I'm done.
yeah. Look, I think that's yeah. I mean, if people haven't been swayed by this season,
Yeah.
to switch to daily or at least 2 or 3 times a week. The only weekly league I'm in is the that Dynasty League. I think you're in that one as well. You did
Yes.
a lot better than me, and that's a weekly league. So I do hope that we'll have a chat with Matt Lawson and see if we can switch that to not weekly, anything
I
else but
I
weekly.
already mentioned it to him. I'm already working on it, so we'll
Okay,
get
well,
that switched.
we will, and look, we'll be launching a Dynasty podcast over the off season. So yeah, look, I'll keep dropping seeds and hopefully change his mindset. I mean, I haven't even asked him; maybe he's fine with it, but we'll
He
see.
sounded like he was into it.
Okay,
So I
well,
don't think we're
that's
going to have any problems.
no,
Don't
okay,
worry,
so
Adam. I'm on it. I will not play
good,
in any more weekly leagues. It's
good,
enough.
good. I don't want to be in any. And Okay, so you sort of said you you do fantasy basketball, you do fantasy football, you do fantasy baseball. Fantasy football is more of a points format. That's my understanding. I don't play fantasy football. I don't know zero about the NFL, but I know very little. Um, what, when you started playing fantasy, obviously quite a while ago. Did you come in through the path of fantasy football that led to fantasy basketball? I just know a lot of people I've spoken with have come through that way.
No, I was all fantasy baseball all the time.
Okay.
Baseball was my favorite sport as a kid, and I believe it was Small World I used to play on. They used to have it was only salary cap leagues, and you got a certain amount of money to pick your team, and then as your players would perform, their salaries would actually go up or down, and you could
Okay.
go over the cap if those players were still on your team. And then performing well, and then if you wanted to sell them later on, you'd end up be working with a higher cap. So it was a complex thing, and I was really young playing this, and I loved it. But yeah, I started out with baseball.
Okay.
When I started working for KFFL, I was kind of like on the. It was we didn't have Twitter back then or anything like that, so I would go on all the major newspaper websites for all the major sports cities and look for news, and then post something about that. And most of that back then was either baseball or football. I used to do a lot of like NFL draft combine coverage because that's what they stick the new guy on because no one wants to write about
Yeah.
verticals and all shuttle times and all
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I started out with baseball, and then
Okay.
the reason why I became so into basketball, and it wasn't big
Mm.
back in the early 2000s. It just wasn't that big, and there wasn't a lot of people covering it. And I loved basketball, so I kind of got into it there, and it's just as it's become more popular, I've been able to do more.
Yeah, I can imagine fantasy because baseball, again, that's a sport I know something about, but not much. And to me, it's probably me watching baseball. I sort of I liken that to you guys trying to watch cricket. If you know what cricket is,
Yeah, yeah.
like a cricket match will go for 3 hours or 5 hours or 5 days, um, and I can sit and watch that all the way through because I grew up with it. Whereas baseball, I just sit down and I get bored within about 5 minutes. So, but I know they do play more games in the NBA, don't they? Like double.
Yeah, it's a 162 game season. So that kind of makes all the other ones a lot easier to manage because you're dealing with
Yeah.
half the game. So it's not, I think that's what helped me going baseball first and then into the other sports is I was used to the heavy workload of
Mm.
managing a fancy baseball team and the other ones aren't as difficult.
Yeah, man, that's a lot of games. So again, with young family, it makes traveling sort of hard. But I've spoken with other analysts about. So have you travelled internationally, and if so, have you got any sort of favourite destinations or places that you would like to visit at some point in the future?
Yeah, I used to do, my wife is from Bolivia. So I used to do a
Mm,
lot of traveling to South America pre-kids,
yep.
since kids, and then COVID and everything too.
Yeah. Yeah.
If we do fly, it's domestic.
Yep.
I'm not a big travel guy. I'm a homebody. I like
Yep.
to stay home. For me, a great vacation is staying home.
Yep.
My wife is the exact opposite. So as you can imagine, I do more
Okay.
away traveling than home vacations.
Yep.
But yeah, I'm open to basically wherever she tells me I'm going, and that's
Yeah.
about it.
Oh, well. I think it's a good motto to have is just do what you're told. It's basically what
Yeah,
I do.
yeah, yeah.
Um, and is Australia sort of somewhere that you would visit, consider visiting, is on the list to visit?
Yeah, I would definitely go there. My kids would have to be a lot older because I know that's
Mm,
a long trip, and that's another reason why
yeah.
we haven't gone to Bolivia. It usually takes us. When I used to go there with my wife before we had kids, it's like a day with all the connecting flights and stuff to
Yeah.
get
Right.
there, and you
Okay.
don't want to do that with little kids. But as my kids got older, yeah, I'd be definitely open to going to Australia and checking out that stuff for sure.
Yeah, I think because so you're East Coast, so
Yes.
I know from here to LA, it's about 19 hours, I think, for us.
Yeah.
And then so from LA to 6 hours, is that right? From one side to the other flying?
I think I haven't been to I went to California probably 10 years ago.
Yeah.
It was a blur, and I stopped in Chicago. I had to see the Bulls play, so we kind of
Okay.
stopped, watched the Bulls, and then go. So I don't have a full grasp of the whole straight
No.
New York
Okay.
to California.
Yeah, I think it's I think it's something I only know because we have been sort of looking at our flights and looking at flight times and stuff like that. So, okay. So one question that I've been talking with people about is Victor Wembanyama for next season. And we're obviously still a long way away. We don't even know where he's going yet. But if we were drafting tomorrow and we just knew that he was the number one pick, we didn't really know where he was going. But I guess two parts to this question is, where would you be comfortable drafting him in a standard 9-cat redraft league? And the second part is what do you think his ADP will be based on hype and that sort of thing?
Yeah, I'd be comfortable drafting him probably late third round, fourth round. I don't think he'll be there at that point. The hype
No.
machine's going to take off. He'll be a second rounder. I think in most leagues, if not very early third round. It's kind of like the Zion thing. There was no way, even though Zion's game initially wasn't going to translate all that well to fantasy with his percentages from the free throw line and lack of 3-pointers and stuff like that. There was a lot of holes in his game, but it's Zion. So everybody was taking him early, and it's going to be the same thing with Wembanyama, especially with the unique skill set that he has. I probably won't have him in any leagues next year, and I won't be upset about that.
Yeah, I think most analysts seem pretty consistent with their response here, is that we'd be comfortable taking him maybe third round. So I'm sort of thinking mid-30s to 40 is where I'd like to get him.
Yep.
But I would say, based on just everything that's going to happen between now and draft season, I think his ADP will be 15. Because I can even see people taking him on the turn. So those that might have a late first round pick 11 or 12, if they can snag someone like a Damian Lillard, or I mean, it's hard to know where people are going to go next season. But if you can pair him up with someone who's a fairly consistent performer and who's generally quite durable, I just think the upside is going to be too enticing for people. So much like you, I don't think I'll have him anywhere. Except I will probably try to get him in, like if I do a draft only league or something like that, I'll just take him in the first round just to have him,
or best ball, something like that. A best ball
yeah,
league, you get some exposure to him there because
yeah,
your roster's so deep anyways, and
yeah,
you're
that's
not
right.
making any in-season moves. So
Yeah, so I probably will try to get him somewhere just to have him. We've sort of spoke with I think it was Zach Hanshu and a couple of other people, but I guess if we had to compare him to someone's rookie season, a few of us have thought it's maybe if we look at Karl Anthony Towns' rookie season, he was something like 18 and 10 with. I didn't have many assists, only had one 3-pointer, but did have. I think his rookie season was his career high in blocks. I think he was 1.8 from memory, something like that. Good percentages. I could sort of see Wembanyama being similar, I guess, maybe 18 points. I do worry about his rebounding numbers. I do
yeah,
think that he's probably not going to be a double-digit rebounder, just because wherever he lands, they're going to try to. They don't want him banging away inside with big guys like Joel Embiid and Jokic, so they are going to play him away from the basket a little bit. So I do think he's probably an 8 rebound a game guy, but he could be 2 threes, 2 blocks. I mean, look at what Walker Kessler's been able to do this season. So, yeah, I do think, and I think in his rookie season, Cat was a top 20 player. So on a per game basis, but that's another, I guess, consideration is how many games is Wembanyama actually going to play?
yeah.
Is there for you? Is there a preferred landing spot for him?
Not, I mean, please don't go to the Rockets. They just seem like they're a mess. They can't really get anything going down. It's just this. They're going to have to do some sort of coaching change, or it's just the environment down there is terrible. It seems like a me first. The veteran, they can't keep any veterans there. to help with the young guys grow. I don't know if Eric Gordon was exactly the right guy to shepherd in the next. I really think they need to get rid of Kevin Porter Jr. I don't think he's going to help them with their
No.
long-term success. So I think they can get out of his contract after this season. I know he signed that long-term extension, but it was a lot of non-guaranteed. So I'd like to see them get out from under him. I mean, the Spurs are great for developing young talent, so that might be a good landing spot for him. The Pistons, they have a crowded front court already, so I don't know if I really love to see him there. I mean, they'd have to make some sort of a trade, I guess, because you can't have him and Beef Stew and Duran and Wiseman. That's kind of a logjam there. So I think maybe the Spurs would probably be the best, just because they have the least. That might be the best spot for him to produce right away. However, they're a long ways in the rebuild process. They're in the early stages of the rebuilding process here, so that might also mean they tank a lot next season, and we don't see him much in the second half. He gets any sort of injury, we might not see him much.
Yeah, and I think they're obviously the three favorites to get him. They're the three worst teams at the moment. I'm much the same. I mean, Houston, in theory, I'd like to see him there because I think they've got some really good young pieces. But
yes,
they're in terms of how they would use him and what they would do, I just don't like that. The Pistons, as you said, they've already got 3 or 4 centers. I don't know where the minutes would come from there. Spurs would be ideal in terms of his actual real life development, but as we've seen this year, they're not afraid to just rest players and give them nights off. So outside of those three teams, I guess we've got Orlando, Charlotte as possible landing spots. It would take a bit of luck, but I wouldn't mind him in either of those spots. Orlando, I actually don't mind what Orlando are doing. They're not resting their guys. They're just playing. They're selling out every night, despite the fact they're out of the playoff race. I'm still not sure on Mosley as a coach, but I do like the fact that they have a pretty set rotation and they seem to know where they're going. So we'll see.
Like you said, I love that they're trying. They're not resting guys.
No,
I think that's an underrated thing for young players' development is to play them. And simply sitting these guys is obviously, from a fan's perspective and from fantasy perspective, it stinks. But to actually play these guys, it's important for their development. And you're seeing the Magic are playing well. I mean, they're not winning a ton of games, but they are winning more games than a lot of people expected. And they're putting up fights against really good teams. And that's going to be valuable experience for them when, 2-3 years from now, they're a contending team. I think that's going to be big.
That's right. And I think, we've seen this year, I'm just having a look because I know they were playing tonight. So they went down by 4 points to Cleveland, and Cleveland are a top 4 team in the East.
Yeah.
Playing their full squad. Markelle Fultz has come on in leaps and bounds this season. He looks really good. Wendell Carter's developing nicely. Banchero's had a solid season. I don't know. I mean, for me, it's common sense is like someone like the Spurs. Even if you play your guys, you're not winning anyway. Like, I don't know why they rest these guys. It's not like if you play Devin Vassell and Jeremy Sohan that you're going to win all these games. You're not. So I don't get the whole tanking thing. I can see resting veterans like Doug McDermott or something. Why do you need to play him? But
he's actually playing, which is the
and he's playing.
He's actually played some heavy minutes. A few games here.
And like Zach Collins, he's their starting center, but he's young and he's been injured his whole career. So why wouldn't you just get him as much court time as possible? And anyway, that's another discussion to have about the frustrating rotations. And so look, that's probably it. We're at 25 minutes. That's probably, I don't know, it's getting close to your bedtime, maybe close to my lunchtime. So before I let you go, again, the season is winding down. By the time people hear this, we'll be in the off season. But what will you have going on in terms of fantasy basketball, sort of throughout April, May, June?
Yeah, I'll have a lot of off-season content, I'm sure, on Rotowire. They usually have me involved in some off-season articles. A lot of them appear on Yahoo as well. Some stuff on NBA.com. So check it out there. And if you're into baseball, fantasy baseball, or or baseball betting, I'll be doing lots of that this summer. So you can follow me on Twitter at @RotoMikeBarner, and you'll see it all there.
Awesome. Well, thank you for coming on. I'm sure we'll be doing some preseason stuff together, whether it's podcasts or drafts or whatever it might be. That will do for today's show. Remember, check out all of our content. Our Discord server is still running. It's a pretty busy time of year for us with all of our Dynasty content that's coming out. Matt's been hard at work producing and getting all of that together. I'm going to have my player ranks coming out next week once the regular season is done. My player ranks for next season, which are way too early, but I just want to do some rankings, so they will be coming out. You can follow our show on Spotify, Google Podcasts, and Apple Podcasts. We would love it if you could give us a thumbs up. Subscribe to our channel. Until next time, catch up.
You just listened to another episode from the Fantasy Basketball International Podcast Network. Thanks for joining us. And for more information about joining our community, please check out our website at fbibasketball.com.